So, the food supplies reportedly dwindling in remote towns of Puerto Rico more than a week after Hurricane Maria struck the island. Huge portions of the population still lacking fuel, water, and communications. And the Trump administration is being pressed to step up assistance. The U.S. military has announced it's sending a 3-star general to the island to help direct the recovery efforts. The White House was asked yesterday why it took so long to make that move. A top Homeland Security advisor says the military had been involved from the start, and it took time to realize that the local government couldn't handle all the logistics of distributing the aid. But the general who helped turn around the government's response to Hurricane Katrina was not buying that.
I don't know what the hell's going on back there. They're using words I don't understand. Yeah, we never used to win wars, like partners, with our partners. No, I'm not your partner, FEMA. I'm a command that you give me a mission and said, take water, fuel, and save the people of Puerto Rico. That's what we operate off as a mission. The military didn't get that mission until yesterday. I heard a conversation earlier today where they indicated that if our task force commander wanted to do airdrops, he could make a recommendation. That's bullshit. Now that commander Buchanan is on the ground, he needs to be given orders and figure out what rules need to be break to save lives. Because this bureaucratic response is not working. With all due respect to the White House, they can try to put lipstick on this pig, but this thing is moving too slow.
That is Lieutenant General Russell Honore, who's the commander of the Hurricane Katrina effort. President Trump has waived the Jones Act, which restricts foreign ships from carrying cargo between U.S. ports, but that waiver lasts for only 10 days. Senators John McCain and Mike Lee are pushing a measure that would permanently exempt Puerto Rico from the Jones Act. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to defend the government's response, tweeting last night, quote, FEMA and first responders are doing a great job in Puerto Rico. Massive food and water delivered, docks and electric grid dead. Locals trying really hard to help, but many have lost their homes. Military is now on site, and I will be there Tuesday. Wish press would treat fairly. He also wrote, Puerto Rico is devastated. Phone system, electric grid, many roads gone. FEMA and first responders are amazing. Governor said, great job. So, Nicole, as usual, the president has to remind you that he's doing a great job, despite what you may be hearing. He is right that it is a logistical question in Puerto Rico. We had the governor of Puerto Rico on this show yesterday, and he said the president has been responsive. He's been diligent. We've talked to him again and again and again, but we have all this aid sitting on the ground and no way to distribute it around the island.
You know, the people of Puerto Rico don't think that the press is treating us unfairly. I think the people of Puerto Rico feel like the press has been the one jumping up and down since before the storm hit the island. The press reported what meteorologists reported, which was that this was going to be the worst storm in 90 years to hit Puerto Rico. This was the worst storm in 90 years to hit Puerto Rico. This was one of the hurricanes that came down exactly as forecast. It was predicted before the storm hit that the island would lose power. The island is without power. And so I think until the president takes himself out of the equation and puts the people of Puerto Rico in the center of it, I'm not sure decision-making will flow from the West Wing the way it needs to now rectify the things that weren't in place before. Jeremy Bash, who was chief of staff at the Pentagon, said that the military does logistics. What these people are in desperate need for is for someone to land on Puerto Rico and build the equivalent of a base. They need to build a cell tower. They need to build bathrooms. They need to build cooling centers. They need to build some sort of electrical grid that can replace the one that was demolished. It's not time for excuses and explanations and after action reports. The president talks about Puerto Rico like some bystander. He can actually fix it if he sort of puts the things in place and gives the military the power to do so.
No, yeah, go ahead, Donna.
It's even worse than that. It's, you know, if you truly had empathy as a human being or a leader, no matter how, even if things were going in the right direction, you'd say, this is not enough. You'd see the pictures, you'd feel just as a human being. And obviously, and I'm not allowed to clinically diagnose anymore, but obviously this man sees this, but yet will, instead of doubling down, we need to do more. It's the opposite. Just, I'm doing a great job. So no matter what,
he can't take himself out of it.
No matter what, not only just take him out, he congratulates himself on it. So it's even worse than that. No matter what, this is a kind of almost a larger, more devastating example of what happened with the military family, where there's not an ability to empathize with the other side, other than how does it affect me, and it's tragic.
So no, obviously the conditions on the ground. There's 100% of the electrical grid is down. More than half of the hospitals are out. They can't get clean drinking water. There are reports not only from Puerto Rico, but islands like Vieques, just off Puerto Rico. They're running out of cash. They can't get fuel. We know what's happening there. I mean, the coverage has been there. Is it it fair to criticize President Trump here? I mean, he's really been pretty engaged on this. As I said, we've heard from leaders in Puerto Rico who said, actually, President Trump we've talked to every day, and we think he's doing all he can to get things here. But has he been a step too slow, or is the criticism fair?
I think the criticism is fair now. I don't think it was fair when it began, which was instantaneously. Right. We heard perverse wish-fathering the thought that this was the next Katrina, obviously for political incentive. The notion that was pervaded across the media was that the president was not engaged in this, which was false. There was no evidence to support that beyond the extent to which he wasn't tweeting about it. And then when he does tweet about it, he talks about how shipping interests really don't want this Jones Act.
Right.
But so he puts his foot in his mouth. When he's not talking about it, I have more confidence that he's doing his job than when he is.
Eddie?
Well, it seems to me that President Trump's moral instincts aren't necessarily connected to the right thing. Right? His instincts don't lead him to do the right thing immediately. His instincts are really about optics, how I'm being perceived, right? And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that it seems to me that in the midst of the crisis that was happening in Puerto Rico, we were dealing with Donald Trump's culture war with the NFL players and his attack on Steph Curry and the like. And it seemed to me at that moment when 3.5 million people are without power, who are trying to rebuild their lives after a Category 4 or 5 hurricane basically devastated the island. It seemed to me at that moment President Trump was supposed to use his bully pulpit, right, to bring attention to the island, to bring all of our resources to bear on that. And then thirdly, we must never forget that Puerto Rico, these folks are Americans. So what we are witnessing our fellow folks experiencing extreme suffering. And I think this has to be made very, very clear to all of us on the mainland that these are, in fact, Americans. And I think President Trump has kind of failed in making that clear.
And that suffering is real and it gets worse by the day as these areas just can't get the supplies that are there.
And I should say this, St. Croix was hit by the Category 5. It doesn't have 3.5 million, but USVI, Virgin Islands, they're still struggling as well.
What's interesting is a guy who we all know is a great television producer and is about the optics. When we think back to Bush at 9/11, when we think back to Obama after Ferguson, after the execution of the Dallas police officers, you felt them there, you saw them, and they weren't doing it for optics, but they were just there. Where with Houston, a guy who was a television producer, for him not to be able to go down there and at least produce for himself, forget the real reason to do it, and he never even connected with human beings on screen, he fails miserably in these catastrophic, almost ready-for-TV moments for somebody to be presidential, and it's odd that he recedes in those moments.
So we're going to go live to Puerto Rico in just a few minutes.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories, and you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.